Right. Yes. So we're almost ready. I'm putting the stream up on YouTube right now. We do have an attendee who trickled in, and once I have that code for the live stream, I'll share it with my comms team. There we go. Um, let me get the share link, and then we'll go from there. Welcome to our current attendee who's here. Thank you for joining us. To our comms team, I'm sharing the code with you now so that we can be live on our webpage as well. All right, so let me bring this over. What I'll do to get things started. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate you guys for making time and also remembering to show up because we engaged you guys about a month or two ago, and throughout this whole process, you guys have showed up to contribute to the overall vision for this panel series. You've brought in other people within your network to this panel series, which I'm forever thankful for. And you've stayed engaged and helped market the series to the point where we're here and we're able to have an engaging conversation. So with no further ado, I am going to share my screen and then introduce this panel, and then we can move on to our introductions for each panelist. All right. There we go. All right. So welcome to everybody who is out there who will stream this and view this. Welcome to the Let's Talk About Equity panel series. This is our third panel. And in this series, we have talked about what it looks like for the tech industry to equitably invest in communities of color. The panel, our company, We Are Tech, is really excited to have you guys, and we are thankful for you guys for being a part of our community. We are an edtech startup that focuses on empowering students and communities of color with technology, and we provide digital literacy resources as well as edtech programming, which is similar to what we are doing here. We bring together a vast community of families, creatives, tech professionals, and educators, as well as nonprofits and brands or major tech companies to support what we're doing and to advocate for our mission. Our website is listed here, as well as our Instagram and our Twitter. And throughout this conversation, or even after this conversation, if you're restreaming it, we ask that you use the hashtag Let's Talk About Equity when you are, shouting us out and shouting out our panelists who have showed up to grace us with their thoughts and their thought leadership. So this is panel 3 out of our series. Our topic for today is attracting, retaining, and empowering talent of color. And in this panel discussion, we will go over the 3 following topics to address our overarching topic. Our first theme will be generational exposure. Our next theme of questions will be moral support and cultural competency. And our final topic will be the evolution of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also have a program for our attendees so that you can follow along with the topics and the themes as well and explore some of the resources. You can find that program at bit.ly/LTAE program. So for today, we'll have our introductions from our panelists, then we will discuss our panel topics. And then if we have enough time at the end, we will conclude with the Q&A. But in our previous panels, our Q&As have been very interactive throughout the entire panel discussion. So we'll see how things go. So to my panelists, are you guys ready to get into the swing of things and introduce yourselves? Yeah, all right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And what I'll do is I will call on people from the top left clockwise until, I don't know if you guys can see it the way I do, but I'll just call on you guys. So to get things started, can we start with you, Nikki? Can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Kimchandani. I'm the CTO and co-founder of BSD Education. It's a company that allows, we work very hard to get teachers to bring technology education to their classrooms. So our entire role is to support teachers and get more digital skills education involved in schools worldwide. Um, I also am a founder of an initiative called RefuGeek. So we help refugees in Hong Kong or we get them involved with technology in a very early stage in their environment in Hong Kong before they get relocated to other countries. So outside of that, I've been a technologist through and through. I work a lot in web and digital marketing. So I do that combo of what's now known as growth hacker since day one. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of sharing some of my experiences as well as hearing everyone else's. Sure. Nice and short.
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Brittany.
Thank you guys for holding me down. Ms. Lashana Lewis, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Lashana Lewis, CEO and founder of Ellum Lewis Consulting. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm. I actually help businesses after they've had the diversity training. And the whole precipice behind that is the fact that I would go to all of these companies and they've already had the diversity training like 6 months ago. And then they were just like, we don't know what to do now. So I come in as that second step to actually help them align their initiatives to be more diverse. And it could look like everything from executive coaching to like one-on-one counseling and consulting with their recruiting team, to sensitivity reads, because there are some documents that have come through that I'm just like, ooh, maybe you need to change some wording here. So I've helped with that. And I also serve as a fractional chief diversity officer for companies who can't quite afford a full-time chief diversity officer, but still need those services. I'm actually a tech geek. I'm a computer engineer, certified and all that good stuff. And I actually gained my job through an apprenticeship program through a organization called Launch Code. And that got me a little bit of fame. I was invited to the White House by President Obama during his administration to talk about my journey. He talked about my journey, and I ended up doing a lot of talking about diversity in tech in general after that event, because people wanted to know what took me so long. And it took me over 20 years to actually break into the tech field. So after a while of actually working in the tech field, I went on ahead and bit the bullet, opened my own company where I actually professionally go around and help companies answer those questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Betty Stearns.
Thanks so much. So you guys are so awesome on this panel. So my name's Betty. I am currently a product manager at a fashion and tech company called Stitch Fix. I've spent my whole career in tech. I was an engineer before and then gradually moved into product management. And I think I've been kind of the employee that's really benefited from Lashana's work, where at the various companies I've been at, I've been, on that community group to, do high school outreach to try to improve our diversity pipelines and really push for programs like that. My path originally crossed with Brittany. When working at my previous company, we were setting up an internship program to specifically work with more students of color and bring in more students of color into tech. And so it's always been something that I've tried to push on companies and push on tech for, and something that I've become really passionate about, especially now being a product manager and seeing how limited opportunities there are for students out there, but how anyone could do this job and how not so many people know about tech and how to get into this role and how to be able to, do these things. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of talk about these things today.
Thank you. Thank you. Miss Brianna July.
Hey everyone, so my name is Brianna July. I currently serve as a customer engineer at Microsoft. So in my role, my technical focus is Microsoft Teams. So I assist Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits in setting up Microsoft Teams, right? So deploying Teams, making sure that it is governed and secured properly and all of that good stuff. So I definitely have been very, very busy over this pandemic. So a little bit of background about me. So I'm a 2018 graduate of Spelman College. I majored in computer science, and then I came to Dallas, Texas to start my job with Microsoft. So where my passion and kind of my relationship with D&I came from, just growing up, I always had a passion for tech, majored in computer science. While I was at Spelman, and afterwards, I was involved in a plethora of HBCU initiatives, right, that were pertaining to tech, right? So one being are you all familiar with the Grace Hopper Conference? But the Grace Hopper Conference is one of the largest women in computing conferences. I was able to speak on a panel sponsored by Handshake and IBM to a bunch of HR recruiter professionals in terms of how to make their companies more diverse and inclusive to women, particularly women of color is where I was coming from. But also just at Microsoft and kind of how I got in touch with Brittany, I've been doing a lot of D&I work lately, like with our CTO and within my organization as well. So thank y'all.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you all. Mr. Gordon Beck.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Beck. I'm a treasury analyst at Netflix. So I've worked at Netflix for about a year and 3 months now. In my first year, I was able to work on with my team the Black Bank Initiative, where we committed over $100 million towards Black and minority deposit institutions to address basically the wealth gap for Black Americans in this country. I've had background working in commercial banking as well. And I'm probably not directly related with the tech industry, but I feel like Netflix is definitely like a hybrid between like a tech company and an entertainment company. And I do embrace a lot of the tech space as far as like learning and education. And, I took like a data science class before I started into my role in Treasury. And that's like really kind of helped propel my career. But I'm very passionate about conversations like this on diversity, on exposing like the youth to more tech opportunities and business opportunities. So happy to be here and happy to contribute.
Thank you. Stephanie, I don't want to mess up your last name. Miss Stephanie Aceves?
Aceves.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Brittany. Hey, everyone. My name is Stephanie Aceves. I am currently a senior director, technically as of today, at Tanium. My background is heavy in cybersecurity, so I lead the threat response subject matter experts. Prior to Tanium, I was in a consulting role working as an ethical hacker for Ernst & Young. So companies would hire us to hack into them. We show them where their vulnerabilities are, give them a nice big report. I always say we get to break everything and make a mess, and then we leave and give it to somebody else to fix. My passion for diversity came when, probably like my high school days when I was going through my identity conversations internally, being a white passing Latina in a predominantly white area and trying to kind of straddle what that meant. And I know from firsthand experience in college, there weren't a lot of Hispanics in my classes. I studied computer science for undergrad. And so there were more than a few times where I was ready to just drop the whole major and quit engineering. And a lot of that was because I put a lot of weight on myself to go it solo because I wasn't making friends the way I typically would expect, because I wasn't finding maybe some relatable things, right, to connect with my peers because of the lack of representation. So diversity has since then become a super uber passion of mine. I work at Tanium with our kind of employee-led diversity efforts and have brought in speakers to speak to our organization about what was going on with racial inequity. One of my next speakers is going to be one of my friends who does immigration law in Atlanta. And so kind of just passionately on my own pushing through these diversity and inclusion efforts, specifically focused on retention, kind of that, okay, you made it here, but like, let's get you to stay by building community and focus on being unapologetically who yourself, just because I've found a lot of success that way. So I try to kind of preach that gospel.
Thank you. I'm very proud and happy to have you all together. You guys have a variety of strong voices and experiences that everyone needs to hear. So I'm happy. I'm really happy you guys are here. So for our first section, we're going to talk about generational exposure. And I have two questions for this section. So to all of our panelists, our first question is, how were you exposed to technology growing up? And how do you think that inspired or supported you to pursue a tech career? And the question is in the chat as well, if you'd like to reread it.
I can start here, Brittany. This one's funny because I think a lot of people can relate to this. I had very strict parents growing up. They're both born in Mexico, and I had every rule that you can ever imagine that was enforced. I had to turn in my phone at 8 o'clock. What they didn't realize is they were creating a hacker, because I would find every way to break every rule they had. So that's actually how I got really interested in technology. And it wasn't until I happened to take a class at USC as an elective to learn how to pick locks, because again, with this little evil kick that I was on, and it turned out to be the hacking class. And so that's how I got my start in security. But apart from that, I think what also kind of even got me to the point where I would even consider engineering was I had a female physics teacher that encouraged me to join robotics in high school. So before that, I kind of just knew the typical lay of the land, successful roles, if you will, your doctor, lawyer, vet, things like that. And it wasn't until I had a mentor, a teacher, like actually tell me, hey, have you considered an option or a career in engineering, and encourage me to join robotics and then start to learn a little bit more about computer science.
Awesome. And right along with Stephanie, I too tried to make a career out of things I got in trouble for. So as a kid, I was the tinkerer. I would take apart things, especially electronic things, because I thought it was fascinating. I grew up in the projects of East St. Louis, which is predominantly a low income area in the middle of America, and about 98% Black. So we were all pretty poor. But for the most part, I would kind of like find my love of just trying to find out how things work. And that's how that started for me. My mother nurtured that. She was diagnosed with cancer when I was 10. She's been in recovery for over 30 years, still alive and well. But at that time, she didn't know how long she would have. And she was like, you like this thing of tinkering and playing with computers and things like that, just keep doing it. So by the time I ended up getting into high school, I was able to convince a counselor to get me into a program that actually was just an old retired military guy decided to teach us computer programming. And this is like 1990. So a lot of this was not even really heard of doing for like this type of stuff for women, because I tried to get in a computer building class, but they said that was all for boys. So I was not allowed to even get into that program. But I was able to get into the computer programming one because this military guy was like, you know, she's got this aptitude to be able to do really well, and this is going to be the future. So I did that. He convinced me to go into computer science when I went to college, and I went for about 3.5 years, but unable to finish due to finances. And back then, the scholarship thing was a lot different than it is now. So I ran out of money. And again, poor kid on welfare. How am I going to just like, you know, go back and forth to home or anything like that? So I was just like, I just need to go back home. But the thing that really impassioned me to keep going with it is that even though I couldn't initially get a job in computers when I got back from college, a lot of people who were already firmly in the IT industry would kind of take me under their wing and would teach me different things. So they were like, let's teach you how to set up a network system. Let's teach you how to break apart a server and replace the parts. Let's teach you this, that, or the other. And I was kind of like their second hand whenever they needed to do things. And about 1998 was the time that I was leaving college. So that was right before Y2K. And so they really relied on me to learn a lot and be able to get all of these computers and the BIOS updated and all this good stuff. So if it wasn't for kind of those underground people that were kind of just like pulling and saying, you can really do something with this, even though you can't formally get it, they say you don't have a bachelor's degree, whatever, they'll eventually catch up. But they still found that it was worth teaching me those lessons, even though I couldn't formally get them in other places.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add on how they were exposed to technology growing up and how it inspired or supported them to pursue a tech career?
Yeah, that's amazing, Lashana. I love that your story is so inspiring. I think I had kind of a different journey from Lashana and Stephanie, where I actually didn't know I wanted to do tech probably until I started my career. Even though I studied engineering, the only reason I got there was someone was like, "Oh, you're good at math. You should just study it." So I studied mechanical engineering, and I realized I hated it in college because it was just like, I don't know, I just didn't like it. And like, even before that, I grew up kind of in the Central Valley of California. So there wasn't that many resources in public schools there. We didn't have any like computer science classes. We didn't have really anything that they have now for kids. And so once I started, my first job at IBM was my first kind of intro into tech. And I only like landed at IBM out of pure luck of going to a conference and someone like taking a chance on me to get hired. And then realizing that tech is like really amazing. And I think from all of that, like my biggest takeaway and what I tried to share with others is that it's really never too late to get into tech. Like, I think it's really difficult right now where people think like from a kid, you have to be, you know, super aptitude to be in math and science and do all these things. And it's really never too late to be able to get those resources and to start, especially now there's even boot camps to help you get into software engineering, product management, data science, anything. And so, you know, my passion for tech really came, you know, later in life in my early 20s, which is not late at all in anyone's life because you're seeing people make these life changes, you know, in their 40s and 50s. But, you know, I was really fortunate to, you know, be able to get on this path at some point and realize how powerful this industry, you know, really is for people.
Yes.
Cool. I love to go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's amazing because I had the flip side because I kind of entered super early. I actually got encouraged by my brother. So having an older brother like tinkering around playing video games by putting in floppy disks, like just fascinated my world at kindergarten. So like coming home and going like, oh my God, I got to learn how to do this. And I vaguely recall my mom being asked by my brother when he came back from work, going like, did you teach him how to do this? And my mom's like, do I look like I know how to use this machine? And I was sitting at home, like after school, just trying to play this video game. And he's kind of like freaked out because he was like, please don't break anything. Because back then it was like something we just invested a lot of money into. And yeah, that was at the age of 4. And I was fascinated by the world of tech only because of course, as a kid, you see video games and that's like your whole world at that moment. And it kind of started diving deep into that rabbit hole. And one of the lucky things that I had was a family member that really taught its importance of accessibility. So providing that access, giving me time to use the computer instead of the alternative, which I see even today with a lot of the students that we work with. It's being taken away because it's like, oh, it's not good for you. So I had the opposite. You know, there's a balance, absolutely. But what's interesting is about like the age of 15 and 16, I started becoming that guy in the group of friends where like, oh, if it's anything to do with anything tech, like if it has electrical circuit, just ask Nikki, he'll fix it for you. And you know, you become that token guy, like, okay, or a token person in the group, going like, hey. Go to him or her to fix this. So I kind of like became the geek in the group. And at first it was kind of weird. Like you had that stigma around it. At the same time, I was kind of like, hey, this is cool. I'm at least known for something. Like, you know, I'm going to own it. And at the age of 16, my brother started running a company on the side as a side hustle to fix computers. So we used to have people coming over and dropping off their big desktop machines, and we used to open it up together. And that was my little side gig while I was learning in school. And then at the same time, on the flip side, I started realizing in school, like the subjects that were pulling me closer to education were in the STEM field. It kind of started getting me fascinated by it. What's interesting, though, is after I graduated, I realized how little the support system was to get someone in Hong Kong. We're labeled in the community called ethnic minorities, so EM for short. And there was no initiative to help us. So we were just like, I was in public school. I kind of graduated, and then I was like, what do I do with this? Like, I don't know what to do. Do people make money out of this stuff? And I got a call one day. We're like, hey, you fix computer stuff, right? Can you come over? Because like at work, we've got an issue with the server. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm doing nothing, so let's go over. And what was fascinating is after I was done fixing a simple server issue, I got asked to walk over to the boss, and this amazing woman, Ann Sang, was sitting there, and I was kind of intimidated, right? I've never spoken to a boss before. So I walked over, and she's like, okay, how much do I owe you? I'm like, I don't know. I guess you could buy me a couple of beers, because I just started drinking at bars. So she's like, okay, well, let's go down now and have a couple of beers. And throughout that process, I kind of didn't realize it, but I was learning what the power of networking was in this industry. And she offered me a job. And, you know, I was kind of telling her I was stressed out about universities and stuff because I was still applying. And she's like, just go to the University of Ann. I'll teach you the real world work. And she got me involved day one and kind of started my career in a creative environment of publishing. And got envious, actually. That's when I started realizing tech is so boxed into this like space of non-creativity. Sometimes it is super creative, but you know, it's not shown as that. And I started wanting to learn design, marketing, and kind of diversifying my skills. And yeah, I kind of got lucky that the world of web picked up, because that's where I found home of creativity and tech. And then started really growing from there. And, you know, halfway through my career, I decided to drop out of university and then get into the field of education, because I felt like that's something we could provide every startup, every entrepreneur coming in. And then that pivoted into working with where we found the source of the issue. And now I want to make sure that the kids of today have the same access that I had, or even skip some of the hurdles, hopefully that the community is providing.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of things of mentorship in each of you guys' stories. You mentioned someone who guided you, restored you towards the direction that you're in. Gordon and Brianna, would you guys like to add to the question? It's in the chat right now if you'd like to reread it.
Yeah, I was going to add a little bit. I mean, just like you said, it is a common theme of mentorship, because that's kind of where mine came from. My grandmother, growing up, she was a typing teacher, right? So a business ed teacher. So I used to constantly see her on the computer just going a mile a minute. And I used to wonder, what was she doing? But I kind of just got very interested in computers then. And oftentimes I used to see my older brother on the computer playing around with the printer, on video games, whether it be the Nintendo 64, right? The PS1, I mean, just whatever it was. Whatever it was. But I would always just become very, very interested in it. Then just kind of fast forward into high school, I had a networking 1 and networking 2 class, where I had my teacher, basically we learned like Ethernet cables, how to make one, how to fix HP, printer issues, smartboard connectivity issues. So anytime any of the teachers were having issues, we would go around and just fix their stuff, and he taught us that, right? So I was kind of more so on the networking side of it, but that kind of came to me naturally. And me being in high school, I never knew what I wanted to major in. I mean, I thought criminal justice at one point, psychology, I really didn't know. But I was noticing like math, that's something that I love. And technology, that was something I love, which made me want to kind of major into computer science. But getting into computer science, of course, getting into the coding aspect, I never had exposure with that. And that's something that I wish I would have had exposure to at that age. Because I think it would have better prepared me and know what I'm up against. Because when I got to Spelman, I mean, my major courses were extremely challenging. I mean, general ed, I didn't have a problem with major courses. Like I graduated with a 2.95, right? And that's the funny part. And that was solely because of pretty much my major courses. I was trying really hard. And I wanted to change my major every week. I wanted to change it to engineering. I wanted to change it to math. I just never knew. But I stuck with it because it was challenging. And I like challenges. And it was just, for some reason, I want to stick with this because it's really challenging me. And like, it was funny, I never got an internship until my senior year of college. But over the summers of my years at Spelman, I was able to work in their IT department, go around and image computers, right? So just kind of honing in on the soft skills, right? Because I was always bummed out that I never had like an internship, right? With Box or whatever companies. But I really kind of took advantage of the small time that I had. And I look back on that, I'm very grateful for it. And I mean, I think that's just really what inspired me, just me kind of being challenged constantly. And that's something that I really admire. I love being challenged.
I like that. Gordon?
Yeah, I was just gonna say for myself, you know, I feel like my entire life technology's always just been in the background, and my first initial exposure to it was just more of something just where it was just seen as fun. Like I remember like in elementary school, we got like a computer lab and we had like a big unveiling of it. And it was like, that was like a really big deal. And all we wanted to do was just like play Oregon Trail or just play all the computer games on there and just all that fun stuff. So it was like still running like Windows 95 and on all that. And then I was always into video games. So it was always in the background, but I kind of just saw it as more like a leisure activity. And then as I got older, you know, you kind of see like, oh, you can use it for research. You can use it for all these things, like with the expansion of the internet and things going on. So, but when I kind of got into like the college time period, you know, I was very, very, just because school was not only expensive, but it was something I had to kind of pay my way through. Like I had to work and go to school, which I don't recommend, but a lot of people have to do it. So that was something I had to do. So I had to be I thought at the time I had to be very, very practical with like my choice in a major. So I kind of just geared more my major towards finance because I just knew, you know, a career like dealing with finance or money is very practical and you can practically work anywhere. But I think what was interesting was as I got to like kind of where I'm currently at in my career, you know, I still always had a fascination with technology. And I remember at one point in my career, my sister was telling me I should take like a data analytics class. And this is like well after I was done with, you know, with school. And I was not looking to go back to school for any reason because it was just such a struggle to get out in the first place. But that was probably one of the best choices I did, just taking a data analytics class and kind of learning about data science and, you know, just staying kind of curious because as I got to where I currently work in Treasury, you know, more and more like working in finance, technology is also like being combined with financial things and understanding data science and understanding how to merge the two really kind of put me at a competitive advantage. And I remember for a job that I got, they said, when I got the position as like a treasury analyst, they said, you know, the thing that kind of separated you from the other candidates was like we have this big data project and a lot of other people just know only finance, but you also know data. And then, you know, where I currently work at Netflix, which I feel like is like the perfect marriage of it, is they really do embrace like curiosity and want, you know, if you're interested in something to learn it or to ask about it and to try and pursue it. So they really do kind of embrace that tech learning feel. And I always want to continue just to kind of learn more so I can bring it to my current career in finance. So that's like a little bit of my story as far as like with technology.
I like that. A lot of what I'm hearing is like people don't have enough exposure to the things, the fact that tech is behind everything. I think that integration has evolved over time. So now people are coming to realize, oh, okay, like, okay, we need to make space for this. We need to teach this. So I could just only imagine once mentorship is tied with the knowledge of the fact that tech is everything, I think more people will be more guided to, you know, see what is really out there and how they can really apply those quote unquote unconventional skills that aren't usually, you know, looked at as tech skills. So we have our second question that we're going to ask you guys, and I'm going to actually drop it in the chat. So to all of our panelists, what type of exposure do you think people should have before entering into the tech industry in order to successfully navigate a tech career? So you guys are pretty much from different backgrounds. So I'm sure, I think you guys can add a lot about your different unique experiences. So I think it would be great to hear from your perspective with the field that you're in. Like, what do you think someone who's navigated the career that you've had, what do you think they would need to know, you know, to be exposed to earlier to help them navigate in the tech space?
I'll start off. One of the things that I learned early on, even though I guess I'm starting to get into the old head uh, generation of computers, but I used to think I had to know everything about a computer to actually call myself a techie. Like I had to know everything about networking, everything about the hardware portion, everything about the software portion, everything about, coding, programming, database design. It's like, no, don't boil the ocean and try to know everything. Is it good to know a little bit about everything? Absolutely. And I usually tell people the first thing that I try to do was learn about as many different parts that were available to getting into computers and getting into tech, so that I can kind of shuttle my way towards a specific route that I was really familiar with. And I'll give a shout out to Launch Code because Launch Code is they're not a boot camp. They don't like that word, so they don't use boot camp, but they're a learning program where you can actually have a chance to be exposed to all of these different, for instance, programming languages, so that you can say, oh, okay, well, I'm more of a front end designer, so I'm just going to stick with, all the web-based coding and things like that. Or, oh, okay, I really like the back end stuff, so I'm going to go for the object-oriented programming languages. But to be able to just kind of say, it's okay if you have a preference for one thing or another. But that was kind of like this hard thing I had to learn the hard way myself. And I see a lot of people doing the same thing and saying, I don't know all of these languages and I don't know all of these pieces, so I can't get into this industry. And I'm like, no. Stick with what you're comfortable with, and you're going to kind of stretch a little bit one way or the other, but don't try to box yourself in. That's kind of the worst thing for you to do for yourself. I actually do a lot of front end and back end just because I ended up learning both and I like both. But I'm like, yeah, I don't have to be like me. Do what you feel comfortable with. Do what makes you feel kind of impassioned, that you find yourself sitting at 2:00 in the morning working on a project and you're just kind of like, oh, wow, I need to go to bed. That's kind of your zone. And if that's where you're at, then, keep going with that.
Find your interests. Find your interests.
Um,
Brianna, go ahead.
So I want to say a common theme that I heard from everyone, but specifically Gordon, is that I think you should know yourself, right? I think knowing yourself more than anything, it is really going to help you when it comes to tech, because technology, and if you look at, all the tech companies that we have today, the technology companies, they're a business, right? So there's all different types of businesses and organizations that make the company works, right? So whether it be finance, law, everything, math, anything that you could think of makes technology work today. But I think that's the biggest thing that I can say. Like, I knew I didn't want to get into coding. Like, I knew I hated it when I was going through it, but because it was challenging, and I still I love front end, right? I love HTML, CSS, I love that type of stuff. I don't really like back end, but getting to where I do now, I don't code. And I specifically work with the Microsoft Teams application on the back end and the interface, and through PowerShell a little bit with coding. But I'm more so I'm people oriented, right? So I'm in front of people. And so I would also say just kind of honing in, and this can't get into knowing yourself, but networking, right? Networking can get you in the door, right? Those transferable skills that you have, being aware that no matter what type of background that you have, you can get into tech. It really doesn't matter. And getting into some of the coding challenges, some of the certifications, me and my current role now, they require us, and pretty much everybody in the company, depending on the role, to get certifications every year. right? So, and the same certifications that some people have coming in who are coming in as a full-time hire or college hire. But I think definitely knowing yourself would be the biggest thing, and just being mindful that you have a foot in tech no matter what background that you have.
Mhm.
I want to piggyback off that because it's something that I talk to a lot of folks about. I'll never forget when I first started at Tanium, I was walking into a company where we had industry experts in everything. I kid you not, I would Google how to do something, and the guy that wrote the article on Microsoft or somewhere works at the company. And I remember coming in like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to ask the dumb question, and kind of being all freaked out, right? That imposter syndrome thing, I'm going to tell you right now, because I've worked with lots of engineers, they all have it. We all have it. It's not unique to being a minority. It's not unique to being a female. It's not unique to being any of that. Everybody has it in tech because tech changes so often. So you're never going to be the master. As soon as you get over that ego, like you might be great at it for a second, but there's always going to be more to learn. So in terms of like tangible steps that you can take, I think while you're working towards a career in tech, one, you don't need a tech background. All you need is curiosity. Most of the time when I'm interviewing candidates, if they have the fundamentals, which are pretty easy to learn, you can go on YouTube, and learn a lot of this stuff. If they have the fundamentals, what we're looking for is the intellectual curiosity to want to figure it out. You can't teach somebody how to start self-learning, how to self-teach, right? So what we look for, and what I always recommend to folks that are interested in tech, don't freak out if you don't have 40 years experience. I swear some of these kids walk out diapers knowing how to code. And I'm just like, that was not something that I knew how to do. I learned in college, right? That does not put you at any type of a disadvantage. To back off what Brianna said, if you want a space in tech, there's a space for you. You need to kind of be self-assured enough to make that space and keep going towards your mission, your purpose in the tech space, and things will fall into line. So stay intellectually curious. Everybody has imposter syndrome. I cannot stress this enough. I coach a lot of folks on this, and it's something that I've dealt with firsthand, but I've seen it in like literally in the experts that I work with, even they're like, oh, I don't know. And we all have it. So just mentally get over that hump and keep it moving.
Thank you.
Like
I think
plus, I was just
sorry.
going to say like plus 15 to like the imposter syndrome thing. It's so real. And I think you keep it hidden for so long until you finally are like, I feel so inadequate. And then you realize everyone else does too. So I couldn't agree more with that. And sorry to cut you off, Nikki, but just like super quick, kind of along the same line of like, literally your background doesn't matter. And I think when I because I didn't realize what tech was until I started working, was like, I just imagined it was like big tech. You're just working on technology, you're just coding. And it's just so much more than that. Like it's so much more, you could be so much more than just an engineer. You could be a product manager, you can be in marketing, you could be a designer, you could be, on the business and strategy side. Like there are so many roles in tech that, maybe if you hate engineering, it's totally fine. I hated engineering. And I think it was because I didn't want to just be a resource. I really wanted to talk to people. And as an engineer, you definitely talk to people. This was such a preconception I had before getting into it, but I wanted to really be part of strategy and be on the business side and stuff too. And I was able to do that in tech as well. And I don't know if that view like really trickles down. Like, I think there's still this whole perception of like tech is just a bunch of engineers, and it's so much more than that. In addition, it's so much more than just tech companies. Like I've had the opportunity to work at a pet care company. I now work at a fashion company. Like if you have any like random interest that is not like building a payment system, which is great if you're interested in that, there's like technology and anything can combine. And if it hasn't combined yet, like go and create it, because like it's going to be amazing. It's going to take over the world. So there's just so much intersection here to be able to like fulfill your passions, whatever it might be.
I 100% echo that. You see this in every startup competition as well. There's an Uber for X or something like that. So it kind of, you see the blend of worlds there. One thing I wanted to share as well is, so I focus a lot of my time making sure that what we can provide kids at a very young age, all the way from 6 and up, like what can they get involved with? One of the things I noticed as well in the youth sector is stop focusing on learning tech for tech. A lot of people go into like, oh, I need to learn coding. And, a lot of parents are pushing that agenda right now. And I don't think that's the right way forward. So a lot of like our curriculum, for example, is scenario based, like focus on the world around you, open up like away from the computer, and you start realizing the importance of tech and why everyone's talking about it. Because for a young mind, they see tech as like, oh my God, I'm going to sit in front of, I'm going to be a coder. Like, that's not all of it, right? And what I worry about a lot is the marketing of the term like learn tech has become so shoehorned a little bit. So that scenario driven approach actually focuses on the 4 factors we really focus on, which is curiosity, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. The empathy part is one of the hardest parts. I think that has always pulled away from tech. And you see this in a lot of tech professionals today. It's like, that's why there's a term called UX and so big, like, like we're doing this for human beings. And I think that factor has really been an important piece in when we build curriculum that is, project driven or scenario driven.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add to the question?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I feel like if I can give advice to just any young person trying to like kind of figure out what they want to do, is you kind of just have to, part of it is just gravitating towards the things that just naturally interest you. And it can be anything, and that can kind of shape what your career path will be. That was something that was big for me, where if I remember when I got into like commercial level banking, I was in a department and it focused on like international trade, but a lot of the people that I worked with like the exception like of a few, like who like one of my mentors and then someone else, it was just a very like, it wasn't really collaborative, and I wasn't really finding like people to really kind of help me and learn more about where I was currently at. But right next door to me was like a lot of people that worked in treasury, and they were always really nice, and like I would always ask them questions, and I kind of gravitated towards them just to kind of learn what I'm doing in my current field. And I feel like that really kind of goes for anyone. If you can kind of just start with what you naturally gravitate towards, you'll find where you want to go. And also don't underestimate just exposing yourself to all kinds of different things. And exposure, it doesn't mean that you're gonna necessarily like everything, but I think if you expose yourself to a lot of different areas, if you give things a chance, you'll find out what you actually truly do like as you get older, and that can kind of pull you in. Like then you can figure out where you want to gravitate towards. So I would always try to keep like an open mind with a lot of things, and try things out, and try and do something like, what haven't I done this year, or what haven't I been exposed to, or just give things a chance. So not always as easy as a young person, because like you think you know what you like, and or you can be very dismissive in some cases. But if you try and keep an open mind, I think you kind of lead to where you want to go. So.
Yeah, I think keeping an open mind, but also like a very sharp, like just focus on your purpose. That's one thing I've learned from my experience. Like I've been very open, but at the same time, I've been very focused on a goal or some purpose to fulfill. And I've experienced a lot of different things, but having that focus has allowed me to bring them all together. And it's beautiful because tech allows that. There's tech in everything. So I really like what you guys were talking about finding yourself so that you can find your way. And Brianna said, do what you have a passion for and the money will follow. Yes, that is 100% right. Because that's when you find your passion, that's when you're able to maximize your personal value. And that value is going to be worth compensation. So we're coming up on our second piece, where we'll be talking about moral support and cultural competency. I only have one question for this, but I think this question will spark some conversation and some sub-questions. So to our panelists, I'm gonna drop this question in the chat real quick. To our panelists, how do you think tech culture can be changed to better serve talent of color? It's a bigger question, but how do you think tech culture, so when we think about tech culture, what it is, how it operates, what it allows, what it affords, how do you think it can be changed to better serve talent of color? Pin drop? No.
All right, I'll go. I was going to let somebody else go, but my professional job is DEI consultant, and I've gone into a variety of different like jobs and things like that. But one of the things is kind of true. What somebody said is that all jobs are turning into tech jobs anyway. So one of the things that I try to break people of is the whole meritocracy. I was like, you would like to think that you have a meritocracy. We all want to think that, but that's not true. You know, we're human beings. We all have bias. Bias doesn't mean we're bad. It just means we're human. So you just have good biases and bad biases. Good biases. I like the color purple. Somebody else might like color purple too. So, you know, great. You know, we're friends, and you know, we probably would buy the same color car or something like that. But you know, the bad biases is what a lot of people focus on, and when they hear the word bias, they think bad. That means you're evil and that you do things purposely to hurt people. And it's like, no, it's your brain shortcutting. That's exactly what it's designed to do. So I kind of try to bring that back and tell people, you know, when you're looking to diversify your workforce, when you're looking to do things, you have to be aware that you have a bias, and it will sometimes be unconscious. So you will do it without thinking about it. So you may look at that resume and be like, that's a great candidate. And the candidate is somebody that looks like you, from the same background that you came from. And you may not even be consciously aware of that. So I tell people, you know how you have that one friend that you need to tell you the truth about stuff, because they'll come in and be like, okay, you're tripping. You're not supposed to be doing this. Bring it back. And it hurts your feelings. And you kind of take that step back and say, you know, this person sat here and they said this because they care and they see that I'm doing something harmful to myself or harmful to my environment without me even knowing about it. You need that person within the job. You need that whenever you're a recruiter and that's your job, is to go through and look through resumes and things like that. You need that person that's going to tell you, hey, you know, LaShawna, you and looked at all, you know, Black women. You and looked at all people who seem to have grown up in, you know, low income areas. You've looked at all da 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 da, and maybe you need to look at yourself and try to diversify what you're doing here. So in those circumstances, I tell people that you need that person with you. And sometimes that makes people feel really uneasy and uncomfortable. I said, when have you ever changed anything and it hasn't been uncomfortable? It's always uncomfortable. It's always uneasy. So if you really want to make a difference and you're not feeling uneasy or uncomfortable at any point in time, you're actually not making a difference. You're just kind of, you know, sugarcoating the whole thing just to make yourself feel good and to check a box. So if you really do want to make a change in the tech industry, you actually have to go through that uncomfortability. There is no other way.
Yep.
I'll jump in here. So you kind of got me thinking, LaShawna. So I think there's three things here, right? I tend to operate from a perspective of like extreme ownership, which means my perspectives are not what they can do for me. It's going to be, what can I do presently to change the narrative? I think the first thing here is be open to expanding your network. And you need to have, to LaShawna's point, folks that are going to keep you accountable. I have conversations with, I call them, if they're watching, they're going to laugh. I call them affectionately the dads. But you know, my whole team, white male, right? And I was a lot younger when I got hired in. And so it might on the surface seem like I don't have a lot that I can.
Oh no, you froze, Steph. Oh no. Can you guys see her, or is she frozen on your end too?
I think she's frozen on my end.
Yeah, I think froze.
Oh no.
It was
I
really
think
she said
compelling
she'll
though.
pop back in
I
though.
know.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Don't stop.
I know.
I wanted to hear that though, but
I want to
she'll
hear
come
it
back.
too. I think she's gonna turn it off and then come back.
Is it all right if I just jump in really quick until we get her back, or?
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Let me see.
let's see.
She might be. No. I'm gonna text her. She said go ahead. She said go ahead. So you could go.
Okay.
I'll jump back. On.
I feel like with this question, it's going to be important. I think the tech culture can be changed to serve talent of color. I think we have to kind of consider, yeah, I think what Stephanie was alluding to, like the mentorship is very important in finding people that will champion for you. But I think the second part of that, and I'll keep it short because I want Stephanie to finish her point since she's back. I think part of it is building a community, really like starting to, for the people that are in it now. And I'm feeling this like a lot more that I've been in my field for a lot more. So I'm starting, and I've had great mentors in my life and my career. I'm really starting to think about how I can give back in like the next generation. And, being in meetings like this, where you're just trying to find like-minded individuals and how you can collectively build a community to start to teach and mentor the next generation. Because we're in a unique position where if you are in like a tech field, or if you work for like a great company, you may be the only one, but you have to understand there's going to be a next generation coming in, and you'll start to see more faces like you. But part of getting more faces in those positions is you do have to pass on, like, you have to become a mentor yourself and kind of pass on those things. But I'll just keep it at that and let Stephanie go ahead and finish. So.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Where did it drop out?
The dads.
Okay. So they are, my coworkers, where on the surface, it might not seem like I have a lot that I can relate to with them. But that's a complete falsehood. At the end of the day, we're all people. And so they have exciting things in their lives. They have, updates with their family. They have all of these different things that I can relate with them. Now, what I was going to say, so the first thing is make sure that you have people that are holding you accountable, and they don't have to look like you. I made that mistake in college, and I made my journey so much harder. I did all my CS projects alone, which I don't know why I decided to do that, because all my classmates were working in teams, but I was like, oh, well, there's no other Latinos, and I hung out with all the Hispanics. So again, build a community. They don't have to be your best friends, but you can still find ways to connect. The second thing is actually what Gordon actually just said. And that's, as much as you need somebody to hold you accountable, you need to become that person for the next people. I've referred a number of candidates for different roles, whether at my own company or at different companies. And it's been my experience that it might be a culture shock for them to jump into, again, white dominated field. And that, a lot of it, what I've seen is like a struggling with imposter syndrome, or looking for representation where there is none. And sometimes it just comes down to a little bit of hand-holding in the beginning, but also being like, look, you deserve to be here. I need you to step up to bat, because I know that you're capable of this. You have to believe it, right? And be that coach in a one-on-one fashion to kind of get them all excited, make them aware that they have that place at the table. I've seen folks, start from this position where they're maybe on shaky ground, maybe not sure if they can handle that job long-term, and they're thriving and they're excelling now. They've taken positions of leadership. All it takes is that initial culture shock adjustment. And we, I think, have a responsibility to be that person for the next generation. We're in these rooms. We know how to play the game. Let's make sure that other folks can learn how to play that game as well. And then I think just overall, large scale, just giving back to the community through recruiting events, like amplifying your voice. I always tell myself, like, she can't be you if she can't see you, right? So make noise, tell people you're here. There's this really in my opinion, falsified narrative that there's not diversity in tech. Look at this panel, right? I think that adds to this. You think about like someone that's in high school or college, and they're kind of nervous about a career in tech. And the only narratives that we hear is there's not a lot of people in tech. Yes, there are. And when you're sharing stories of additional folks in technology, diverse candidates, diverse people that have changed the course, don't reshare the same story all the time, because that propagates this narrative of this like unattainable one person that did it in 1970. That's not the reality. Look at how many faces that we have here, right? Share your friends, share your neighbors, share your family, share people that you know that are doing it presently, and change that narrative that there's not a lot of diversity in tech. It does not serve anyone except for people that don't want more diversity in tech, in my opinion.
Yes. 100% second that. One of the key things I noticed as well, when people go with the diversity narrative and the communication of it, it's always labeled. It's kind of like, oh, we're doing this out of a diversity project. I see this a lot in corporate communications recently, it's like no one wants to be part of a project that involves diversity. They want to be just involved. And that's something I really wish that would change in leadership today. And it's our responsibility to do that. When we subconsciously want to continuously do diversity initiatives, but we don't want to label people as a diversity initiative. I think that's one of the most hurtful things I've been labeled as before. I didn't actually appreciate it at all. Like being called a project is not fun. And that's not really the way it should be gone forward. The other thing in terms of leadership, I also would love to see a change of to support more wider growth of it is operational versus expectations. A lot of leaders are doing lip service right now online on social medias. I've been on rooms on social channels like Clubhouse where you see a lot of conversation but no execution because they're not the people that execute. So get the people that actually do the hiring, get the HR people if you have to, get them involved in the communication, not just have it ripple down top bottom. I think that's super important because a lot of people like in the leadership space, they kind of do all the talking and then go, okay, it's all over to you, take care of it. And that's not how it's going to work because the communication and that transparency will not ripple down. And I guess I just have one more point there is down to the product. So I've been involved in product all my life. And it's actually more recently that I'm pretty lucky to have a very diverse team of individuals working with me. And they've been constantly giving me that perspective. It's like you guys all said before, it's like, provide that surround yourself with a diverse group of people because one of the biggest things it does give you is perspective. What I love about that is when we're building product, we're teaching the next generation, we need to be diverse. And since day one, we need to show representation. And that's been super important. Honestly, for the first 5 to 10 years of my career, I didn't even think about it in terms of product. I was like, does it work? Great. And you go into problem solving mode. And that's really where the empathy really needed to strike back in here is allowing that diversity in everything you touch and build. It's like, do people feel represented by what you're putting out there? And that was actually, to be honest, one of the hardest things I had to think about because it almost builds your product into 4 times greater the problem than you're going for. And it can throw people off financially as well as the time. So yeah, I think as leaders, we need to push that forward and do that all the way down to the bottom tier, like the grassroots of what we do.
Stephanie and Nick. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, I just wanted to add, you talked about what you put into your products. I was speaking to someone preparing for this, and they were talking about the importance of that because if people don't feel represented by your product, they're not going to consume it. And you don't want to program bias into your product when you look at the AI technologies and just research. There are people who really should be considering being a part of research studies and different things to make the world better. But if you don't appeal to that audience, you'll never have that data to back your product development. So go ahead, Betty. Just wanted to add that.
Just super quick. It was Stephanie, you mentioned something about playing the game and helping, people bring along. And it's something that I'm always conflicted with. And I think that's why this question was so hard. It's yeah, we got to play the game to do better, but also there's this other side of me that wants to change the game. Game isn't working for so many people and so many individuals right now. And so it's how do you play it and appeal to leadership while also trying to change their minds? And it's a really difficult point I think we're all at as people that are able to be in these rooms. And so exactly what Nikki was saying is I remember, this is where I know I need to work on it, but somewhat screaming at leadership and being our entire product management team is white. How are we creating a product to appeal to all colors? As our president is saying, we're inclusive to all and diverse to all. We don't have a single Black person that works at this company. We are not. You can't go out and say that and have a product team that, this isn't the current company I work at, by the way, have a product team that is saying something and the product team that's all white and it's not creating an inclusive product, is not even considering it. And it's yes, we got to bring more people along, but I think the mindset of diversity needs to change among leaders as well. It's not just a number to hire, but it's actually bringing more perspectives on. A really great thing that my current company does do is instead of saying culture fit, we say culture add. And so as all of our additional hires, we don't do referrals at Stitch Fix. Because if your whole company is white and female, you're just gonna, or that's Stitch Fix at the moment, but like if your whole company is white, you're gonna just keep referring additional white people. So we don't do that. I've seen a lot of great companies that will remove names and ages from resumes or anything that would indicate age to try to remove these things, but there's such little things to just help the recruiting funnel. But then it's like, once you get here, why are you here? And is it just to be a number, or is it actually to be an add to the product, to the company, to the culture and stuff like that? And I think that's the shift that hasn't happened in DEI and hasn't happened in tech yet, that still needs to. And I think it's being driven by, us, but it needs to now be driven by these Fortune 500 leaders as well. And that's what's not happening.
I agree. I would first say, as Stephanie and Gordon said, pay it forward, right? So be what you wish you had when you were younger, right? You see the disconnects, you see what's not happening, put it into play. Secondly, I know LaShawna talked about this. Betty just talked about this accountability, right? Holding leadership team accountable, shake pockets. This is the prime time to kind of get anything done for D&I right now, right? Brittany, this is the prime time with everything that has been going on over the past year. I mean, you're seeing companies put out words that they've never said internally to us, right? So, I mean, you hearing them talk big game, hold them accountable, use their words against them. I personally reached out to someone, of course I can't say who, but reached out to somebody in our leadership team, used their words against them in the same email that they sent out to us a year ago around this time. And Brittany, this is kind of what I was getting into, right? That I was talking about, what I've been working on, but using those words against them and holding them accountable. Think about it. These companies are looking for a return on investment. They got the money. They just want to know, why should we put this money up? We need to make sure this money is going somewhere that it looks good for us, right? It's a return on investment, PR stunt. Make it look good. Fluff it up to them. Why do you need this money? What do you want? And what are we going to get in return if you get this money? Oh, I want to implement this, which will then impact this many people, right? So, and literally this is like something on the side that we worked on, but last year we worked on this initiative where we're working with Dallas Independent School District. And we were able to get $100,000 through Microsoft Philanthropies, which is separate from actual Microsoft, but they gave us $100,000, which could go for funding for electronics for the school system, right? And now we're working on different workshops to do with these middle school and high school students. And this was based on what was sent out, right? What happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor last year. But I mean, hold them accountable. And I want to say, lastly, more empathy in action and less ego in action, right? Take you out of it and put others before you. I mean, that's the biggest point as well. And Stephanie, I'm reading the chat window about what you just said, right? So for allies that watch this, don't come to a diverse candidate for an opportunity and tell them they were considered because the company wants to increase diversity efforts. This can undermine the employee's reputation and self-image and make them think that they haven't earned these opportunities, but instead only being considered because they are diverse. And Stephanie, I know as a Black woman, the reality of the situation is I am being recruited because of my numbers. Because I'm a Black woman. It's the intersectionality of being your race and where you come from, right? That's the reality. So and Stephanie, I 100%, I agree with what you're saying, but the reality is it is what it is, because that's why I got hired. And even me, I've been speaking with the University Relations team, trying to do work in HBCUs to continue to pay it forward, right? And in really hearing from the corporate side, the metrics behind stuff. That's the reality of the situation. It's sad and it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be like that, but that's just the way, that's just how it is.
I agree for what it's worth. And because it happens to me a lot, never goes anywhere. But obviously, if you're given that opportunity, do not discredit yourself. You've earned it. This is more for allies. Like if you're somebody that is doing diversity efforts, I can't tell you how many times the first thing that open is, oh, well, we're trying to increase diversity, so we want you to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, all right, but like, I've also kind of earned it within my reputation, my technical skill set, you know what I'm saying? So if someone wants to be helpful, that's not how you lead a conversation, regardless of what the metrics are.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, take that opportunity. Like it's only another platform for you to make noise. So benefit from it if you like can. But if you're one of the allies that's doing that, stop it.
And I just wanted to add to just on this topic because especially with like my experience, like how we made our announcement, I got to be a part of that project. What a lot of people don't know about how that came about, it actually came from an employee in our at Netflix that asked the CEO a question like, why don't we hold our fundings any minority deposit institution? So it wasn't like just, I mean, it became a reality because of the momentum of what was going on at the time, but it started from an employee asking the question. And I feel like when you're in spaces like that, people don't really realize the power that they have. Like, you're hired at this place for a reason. So what are you going to contribute? What can you bring and start to shape the organization? Don't look to the organization to like bring you what you want out of it, but see what you can bring to the organization and what you want it to be ultimately to become, because you're a part of it. So I felt like ever since we got that opportunity, my mindset has kind of changed where I can't just do my day-to-day job only. I have to make sure I'm doing things where it's going to impact the greater community and things that I'm passionate about. So a lot of that is extra work. It's going to be uncomfortable conversations. It's going to be conflicts of interest with people that aren't as passionate or don't see it as important, but you have to be ready for that. It's almost like an extra burden, but I think it's important if we want like the outcomes, like for a more diverse work group or people in tech or any fields that we want to see. So
yeah, wow, this is powerful. I think everyone who's on this panel is a representation of how you can take the initiative. You know, it's not solely up to the director of DEI or the team that just does that. You can make moves within your sphere of influence. And I just have two things to add to what I think could be changed about tech culture. One thing that I heard you guys talk about is the return on investment. And a lot of times we see these tech companies, and even just brands in general, they'll put out something just to say that they're doing it. But what's the real return on investment if the culture of your company isn't shifting or the whole industry isn't shifting at large? And I really would be interested in finding out how companies are measuring their return on investment from diversity, equity, and inclusion. And like, what does that really mean? Like, do they gauge it by data from the culture of their company, the sentiment? Like Nikki, I think you could probably add to that because you mentioned before your background work, you as well, Lashana. I just think, changing the thought of like the investment of DEI and what that really means, I think that can help because it'll take it from being performative and transactional to actually making substantial change. And yeah, I'll let you guys add, and then I'll add the part I wanted to add before that. Go ahead, Nikki.
I think one point is definitely around data. So that plays a big play for us. When we notice, I can tell you firsthand from BSD, Brittany, you've used BSD, so you've seen it come from customer side. One of the big things we noticed as well is the more accessibility we add into our curriculum, into our platform, we started noticing more retention. So that was one of the measurement that I don't think many tech companies were looking at like maybe a decade ago. They are looking at it, and is one of the number one things to look at now is when you see a particular group or a community go onto your platform, how long before they drop off? Because a lot of people go onto platforms because they're told to, because they've been pushed to do it, especially in like school environments, right? Kids don't really sometimes have a choice. They go like, okay, we're doing this now. And what I love to see is we have something called inside school hours and outside school hours measurement. Basically, it's like, after 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., we kind of see our kids actually going back onto our platform. And that was super exciting for us when we started noticing different communities. Now, our data doesn't tell us who exactly it is, but we know who the customers are. So we speak to the customers, and they're like, our kids are talking about it because they're pushing forward in the curriculum. it's a problem that we're creating for our teachers to an extent, because the kids are so enthusiastic about the curriculum now that they're driving it forward and pushing the boundaries of what they're learning. But we saw that impact almost within, I would say, the first round of changes. Because as soon as we did that change, we started rolling out some new curriculum and providing that access. We started seeing students of different backgrounds in different countries. Like we're in the Middle East now, for example, and that really made us think like, okay, we need to adapt some of the stuff we talk about. Like, for example, in the Middle East, you don't want Peppa Pig. That's not a good idea, right? You can't put that up there. And you don't think about these things until you're facing that issue. And as a global company, like, you got to start thinking that. And that really showed us a lot of information around that. Like, okay, as a strategic partner, we're not going to bring someone like Peppa Pig and then bring that into the Middle East. That's a really stupid idea, because you need to be culturally sensitive. Yeah. And that's just an example of like how we were able to measure some level of success and bring that into, when you're those revenue conversations, because you have to have that conversation, right? At the end of the day, it's a business. It needs to make money. Like Brianna said, like, it's a bottom line we look at, and there's some realities that we look at. And what we've done is actually use technology to solve the problem there. Is how can we measure diversity impact? And we used hopefully data, and we're still looking at more options, of course. It's a very young field of measurement for us.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the things to kind of take from that is that I actually put together this presentation it was like half Microsoft and half Redgate. That's called Data-Driven Diversity. And I did it at the Microsoft office here in St. Louis. And basically what it did was just put hard numbers, because I was like, okay, yeah, some people, executives might not understand what the cost is. So I was like, it's actually in the news. If you go back to those eHarmony ones, or the ones where the crash test dummy, for instance, I told people, did you know that crash test dummies that are used in the car and safety thing, they didn't put a female crash test dummy in the driver's seat until 2011 to test. And I was just like, that little minor thing. And the reason it came about is because they noticed this increasingly high number of women dying or having serious injuries in these cars that were, purported to be safe. And I was just like, that information is out there in the news. And one of the ones that I tell a lot of people is that, I still go to the public restroom, and I go to the automated things to go get the soap, and it won't recognize my hands. And it's literally because the UV technology that was used to create that particular soap dispenser was not created to recognize dark skin.
Wow.
And they say, oh, well, that's benign. And I was like, they're using that same technology in self-driving vehicles. And as a result, they noticed that some of the self-driving vehicles were not noticing women of color walking across the street. That's why this is bad. So, when you kind of break it down to that, and I said, would you rather a multi-million-dollar lawsuit or to hire a chief diversity officer and create a team whose job it is to go into R&D and be like, okay, what are we testing? What type of humans are you including in this test, so that we can look at all of these different user scenarios and make sure we're not missing something glaring. And it's out there. But the thing is that, they're so used to just covering it up, throw the money at them, shut them up or whatever. And I'm like, those news stories are out there. There is a case for diversity. And I actually put it together in a presentation. I even put the consumer spending per demographic. So I think I did African Americans, I did Asian Americans, I even did Americans with disabilities. And I said, you're missing out on all of these different consumer spending charts or, verticals, because you aren't willing to take that extra time to maybe go and even research with your own employee resource group or a business resource group and say, you're the LGBT group. Is there something in our product that you can kind of point out to us to say, this isn't cool, you might want to consider doing this before it even gets out the door? I was like, you have them there. They're your in-house focus group.
Yeah.
You might as well use them and, you know, give them a little benefit for their time. So I keep putting it out there, and I'm like, this isn't just about being nice and tree huggy and all of this. This is actually, every business is now a world business. You are not, you know, mom and pop round the corner business that you only have to please the people in a 10-mile radius. Your customer base is the world. So if the inside of your company doesn't look like that, you're missing out. And I put it there, and one woman asked me about it, and she was just like, how do I convince them? I said, just tell them it's cheaper than a lawsuit. Get yourself a chief diversity officer. I'm a fractional chief diversity officer. If they like, I can't afford it. Get yourself one to come in, reanalyze, relook at your company, because by the time you've actually gone through and changed all of this, you would have saved yourself a lot of headache, and you would be able to go into an entirely different consumer base that you didn't even think were using your product. But I know I tend to make people mad, but I was like, that's kind of half my job, right? To go in there, make you mad enough to do something about it. And you know, thank me later.
Can I ask a question for Lashana?
Oh, go ahead.
Lashana, I'm curious, right? So when you, where do you see in the leadership hierarchy a chief diversity officer? Because there's a need for them to be consumer focused or product focused, but obviously internally, maybe there needs to be some conversations in HR recruiting. Where do you typically see that doing very well?
I see them at the same level as a CTO, a CIO, CFO, COO. They're just as important to the company as any of those verticals with underneath those other C-suites. I say, you know, let your CDO report directly to the board of directors, just like your CEO does. Because the thing that I've seen is that sometimes they'll put that chief diversity officer under a CEO, and it's the CEO that's making the decisions of what the chief diversity officer can do. And that CEO might not be aware of their own bias. So it never gets out to the board of directors, and the board of directors has no way to get directly there to the chief diversity officer. So then you have this gridlock. And to be honest, you know, being a CEO, you have a crap ton of things to do. So I was like, you know, it would be a lot easier to just kind of put that vertical right there and just say, you know, let's put them on the same level, because it's really important that people look at this as a dire portion of your company working, just as important as it is that your plumbing and your bathroom fixtures and your company building are working. You have a whole entire team devoted to that, even though it may not directly affect the product that you're producing or the service you're producing. But you know, if you have employees, you need bathrooms. That's all you know. That's for the employees. This is for the employees. So I was just like, you need it. It's an instrumental part. But the thing is we try to shove it under the rug, and we put it on the same level as a air hockey table or a vending machine. It's like, no, this is not an added benefit. This is a necessity. So that's where I see it. And I say, you know, there's been companies that are just like, well, we don't have money for a chief diversity officer. I said, well, take it out of the other C-suites pay, or take it out of the CEO's pay. You need to have this somewhere. You wouldn't do a company without a chief financial officer. So, you know, find the money. It's there. And like I said, I offer fractional services. Not saying that I'm asking any big company come pulling at me, but you know, those services are out there, so they can do it. It's just that whether they're willing to face the reality, which is why I even put together that presentation that I did, because I was like, do you want to be like them? Because you're going to be like them if you don't do something about it.
Whew, powerful. So we're coming up on, we're getting pretty close towards the end, but I wanted to see how you guys are. You feeling good? I know it's getting later in the evening. We're good? Okay, cool. We do have one more section, and we have just 2 more questions in that section. So the title of our next section is called The Evolution of, well, we've kind of been talking about it, The Evolution of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. For our next question, I'm going to drop it in the chat real quick. This one moment, and then I will ask it aloud. So, how do you think DEI practices have changed over the past 10 to 20 years? And how do you think they could change moving forward to better serve talent of color? So I think we touched on some of these solutions in terms of like what you were talking about, Lashana, about actually prioritizing ACDO. But what are your thoughts? A lot of us haven't really been in the industry for the past 20 years, but I think we've have experienced the past 10 and how it's changed. So what are our thoughts on how it's changed and how do we think it could be changed moving forward to better serve talent of color?
Maybe I can start with like I think in the last 10 years we've gained a lot of awareness and impact. We've seen the impact of it now. Like Lashana said, like it's all over the news or as well now. So people are seeing it in various different scenarios. Going forward into the next 10 years, I think the best practices can become a norm. That's the way forward, in my opinion. Like instead of making it like we still need to think about this stuff, it should be part of like, like the same way about 2 decades ago, people were wondering, oh, do we need tech? Do we need a tech person in our company? Those were the conversations about almost 2 decades ago. And here we are saying, no, of course we do. Like, that's a no-brainer. I think that the way forward to serve the community that we're addressing, like all of us, I think the best way forward would be if it became a norm, it became part of standard practice, not good practice, standard practice. And I think that's really important to have that shift. And we need to work towards that. For me, it's no longer a conversation point. It needs to be part of every day. And I think the next 10 years, we need to work really hard on stop making it a news headline if somebody's doing something in diversity. Yeah. And start making it of course they're doing it. It should be a news headline if they're not. Yeah. So I think in the next 10 years, I personally would love to see that shift, and I'm going to work very hard to make that shift happen on my part. But I think that's the way forward as one piece of it.
Thank you. I want to highlight, Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that? Because I do know you do have to head out soon. I really value and appreciate your voice, and thank you for being here. So would you like to add to that piece?
Yeah, I'll add, I posted this for the panelists in the chat. But one quote that I read, I think it was in Mastery, the book, it's a book by Robert Greene, but he describes diversity as an equal opportunity to fail. And I think that's super important, right? Because we might have diversity in numbers, we might have the data and everything showing up, or optically, it might look like we have diversity considerations. But when you think about what the repercussions are for failure for your different employees, your different teammates, do folks have the equal opportunities to fail in the sense of, do they have the same opportunities? Are they at the table to volunteer for these different projects? Second one, like it's a kind of a double cool kind of statement. The second way to look at that statement is equal opportunities to fail, meaning if they fail, what does that failure look like? Are they reprimanded in different ways? Is their whole identity and legitimacy challenged where somebody else's might have just been, oh, they're having a bad day, they didn't sleep enough, the baby didn't let them go to sleep. So I think just to be thoughtful of things like that, it can be kind of like a guiding light question as you start analyzing diversity efforts in your organizations or in other organizations.
Thank you. Thank you. I have one thing to add to that. You talked about it at the beginning, Lashana, about bias. I think the same way companies need to really consider their bias, I think people in the workforce also need to admit or acknowledge their submission to respectability politics. Because that alone we live in a world that's built on white male supremacy. So the gauge or the standard for respectability politics, in my opinion, is based off of the credibility of a white man. And if we continue to operate off of that, our gauge of what makes us successful and what success looks like, what we're capable of, who's capable of what, who's deserving of respect, it's always going to be based off of that. And we're only going to hurt each other, I think, if we continue to submit to that, because we do it to each other too, So Stephanie, thank you so much. I know you have to head out, but we really appreciate you.
Thank you all. Thanks for the time today. So
would anyone else like to add to the, who would like to add to the question of how do you think DEI can be changed moving forward to better serve talent of color? Okay.
Well, I'll just quickly say, since I've talked a lot and I've said a lot of things, in general, seeing that my journey started in 1998, formally in the workforce and up until now, it has gotten better. But I think we kind of sit on our laurels a lot and say, oh, because there's an effort out there, then we don't need to do anything until that effort says we're doing something wrong. And that's where the self-analysis and self-actualization of whether or not you're doing something wrong needs to kick in. I would say, in the next 10 to 20 years, I would like to see like almost pulse surveys of every now and then of companies saying to themselves, what haven't we talked about in the last, 6 months? Is there something new that we haven't discovered? A lot of companies are just learning about neurodiversity. So I've had to go in and explain what neurodiversity means because I'm actually a portion of that community. And, they have the Rain Man, if you've watched that, or I Am Sam mentality of that's what that means. And it's like, no, you have to understand. And there's even organizations that are very dangerous that are going out there telling you that neurodiverse people will destroy your company. And that's the message that they're sending. So it's just like, there's still a lot of work to do. And as long as those companies are open to be continuously evolving when it comes to going out and reaching out and not just sitting on the laurel and saying, I've checked this box and everything's okay. I think, steady progression is going to be there. And I tell them, nobody's expecting you to get it perfect overnight. We just expect for you to be doing something. And as long as you're doing something, that means a lot more to the people who are affected by it.
Thank you. Gordon.
I was going to just mention that, honestly, I feel like I just want to thank Lashana for like really addressing this question well. Honestly, I just feel like it's really too tough to add anything else that she hasn't said. And I appreciated her response. But I will say that, I feel like we are making great progression so far, but it's just one of the things where you have to, continually check in on the efforts. I feel like announcements are one thing, but reporting, quarterly checking in on progress, yearly, like as often as possible. It's continuous. It's not something where and then people forget about it. And that's the biggest thing that comes to mind to me is, and I'm even trying to just hold myself accountable where I'm trying to hold myself accountable for the company that I'm in, just to make sure, hey, are they really following up on what they say? Or are the things that I'm working on, how much am I pushing to make this become a reality? So.
Thank you, Gordon. Would anybody else like to add before we kick off our last question? No? Okay. So we're on to our last and final question for this panel. Thank you guys so much for rocking out with us. Like, I know it, after being at work all day, everybody's working from home, you guys tuned in. I'm so happy and so thankful. So our last question, our previous question, we talked about changes that need to be made moving forward. But you guys are change makers in your own sphere of influence. So I think it will be great to address a question that can inspire people to become more like you, to inspire people to, make that change within their sphere of influence. So what do you think the tech industry can do to provide more support for tech professionals who want to foster more DEI initiatives in their companies?
I think for starters, sorry, go ahead, Betty.
No, just a big one is if you are asking for like community support or employee support to do anything around D&I, is pay your employees to do that work. I see so many companies are just, I was one of them. I just volunteered and was completely exploited for it. And my manager's expectations of my delivery did not change. I still had to do my full-time job plus run a whole internship program, which was completely unreasonable. And again, not the current company I'm at, but don't exploit your employees of color to do things like this. If you are asking for their support, pay them and manage their other work expectations appropriately as well. And I think another one too is just like, and this is, I think, a company beyond tech problem, is just being more empathetic to mental health of all people. Like every day, what people are going through is so difficult. Like right now in the Asian community, you know, we had a major event happen yesterday, and having a manager reach out to me and say, hey, you know, are you okay? You know, things like that I think are really important, and allowing and training people in this space to really reach out and be more open to discussing race, discussing diversity and things like that in an appropriate way. Obviously, I think it's still really hidden and shameful and just like too touchy of a subject. And I think so many of these things just need to like become a little bit more normalized and be, you know, able to talk about more comfortably in the workplace, because you know, we are all different. We all have different cultures, and we want to learn and talk about these cultures at our workplace as well, and be, you know, kind to our mental health in these spaces as well.
Thank you.
I'd just echo that with like, make it part of your personal brand. Like a lot of people that I coach in terms of building up their personal brand online, and you know, the marketing strategy, for example, is they go like, oh, but that's not really something we want to touch. And I've been doing that personally. Just to be super honest, like I've kind of avoided, like I'm in a situation in Asia where political conversation is very dangerous, right? So you tend to like switch off from everything, and knowing when it's okay to like communicate, that's information I gained only from experience. And I think the tech industry could make accessibility to DEI information a lot more. Like make it a trend to like spread that information, make it accessible. Like Lashana, like some of the stuff you were talking about, I was taking notes because I was like, I don't know when I'm going to hear about this again, and where do I look for this? And you know, like I'm gonna have to tell my team this, and a lot more about those scenarios. Like I don't have the subscriptions or the news channels to like sometimes look at this information, and that's strange, right? We should have that. It's about human beings. So yeah, I think the tech industry can do a huge benefit to the entire colored community by actually talking about it a little bit more and making that information accessible. Like, what can you do if you're a victim of that in your company? Like Betty, you mentioned like being exploited for certain scenarios. Like that's something I may have not even realized, but we may have done. Like someone volunteered, and I'm like, all you, man, like you take care of it. And you know, like just owning up to that as a leader, it needs to be a norm. Like, oh my God, I just was on this panel and I realized that I'm going to go and speak to someone in my team today that I think I might have done that to, because I was like, okay, I got to take care of this product. You take care of this part. And then that's not cool. That's not cool at all. So I think that, I mean, I don't know how many other people would have opportunities to hear that firsthand, you know? So giving that opportunity, like, you know, Brittany, what you're doing is really important here, creating that discussion and accessibility. So for people like me, that would benefit a lot.
Wow. Here we have it, man. This is powerful. Anybody else want to add to it?
I was just gonna echo pretty much everything Betty said. Biggest thing is providing that support system. But also, as I mentioned before in the previous answer, putting that actual empathy into action, right? So you can talk about it, right? You talk about it and you say, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, we pledge to do this, we pledge to do that. Put your money where your mouth is, but even beyond that, put that action beyond that, right? So that's really what I have to say. I want to echo pretty much everything Betty said. I agree 100%.
I love it.
I'm gonna say everybody is on point. Thank you for Betty for the pay people. Yes, pay people. And the other thing that I caution companies against is analysis paralysis. Stop trying to get your DEI stuff to be perfect. Do it. Just get it started. You know, yes, go and consult some professionals. Do the same thing you would do for any product or service that your company would produce. but don't get into analysis paralysis, and don't try to use business operation procedures to solve a people problem, because those are two different things. Sometimes they want to go down the agile method, and I'm like, no, this is not a product or service. These are people and they operate differently. And I even actually, for one company, I suggested a psychologist, an on-site psychologist, because the type of things that they were telling me, I was like, y'all just need a psychologist that people can go to, that would be in the little corner. Nobody can, detect that person went to visit them. But that was for that particular company. It was their unique situation. So to be open and be able to be, different with your solutions based off of what your company needs, which is why when I do my stuff, I don't do a template. I said boilerplates don't work. I need to listen to you. We need to sit down. We need to have honest discussion, sketch out some goals that we're going to meet together, and then work towards those goals over a certain period of time. But I mean, I was like, be open, be flexible, but start doing something. Don't wait until, you think you have everything perfect. Offer your employees something.
Yes. Did you have something to add, Gordon? No?
I think everything's been said here. I mean, I always just appreciate just allowing spaces and collaboration. I would love to see companies talk to each other more, because I mean, I know there's a lot of competition, but a lot of people are starting to do the same things. Like, I mean, I can speak from experience. When we made our announcement on the initiative, companies started coming to us. It's like, hey, how did you get this done? What did you consider? And I love the conversation that we're having, because it's not something like we're trying to hide what we did and saying we're the only one that did it. We're trying to show other companies how it's done and learn from them. And so, it can be a collective, collaborative effort across industries. It shouldn't just be one company. It should just be an industry thing. So.
Yep. That's how you shift the culture. So we covered a lot. Like the main thing I always want to take away from these panels through the series is the areas of investment. As a founder, as WeAreTech is creating its tech partnerships, we want to keep in mind like where we should direct resources to empower our community. So you guys brought up some really great things, like investing in a CDO, paying employees to do the work. Are there any other areas of focus that you think should be invested in to effectively empower talent of color?
I think something that was a common thread early on is just mentorship and mentorship programs. Not everyone's able to cross paths with someone that might gravitate to them as a mentor. So providing more opportunities for people to meet people, expand their network, and grow that area, I think is so important, especially for people of color going up against, historically white people that are just connected with a ton more white people that are in this industry. It's typically an uphill battle. So any opportunity to, mentor, expand your network, I think is so important and so valuable.
And I'll add sponsorship to that, as well. You need somebody to put your name out there, when you're not there at the table. So increasing the sponsorship opportunities. And I tell people, don't wait to ask me for my permission for you to put my name out there. Go and do it. If I didn't want it out there, I would tell you explicitly, don't say anything about XYZ. But be the person to do that for other people, which I have, and be open and kind of straightforward. I've actually had to tell some of my mentors, yeah, go ahead and put me in for an opportunity and just kind of let me know. And, I'll wait in the background. But I think it cannot be overstated, the level of sponsorship that is not given to people of color in general in tech, and women of color in particular.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else have anything to add to that last tidbit? No? Well, that, we did it. We have concluded this series. We banged it out. Yes, I'm super excited. I'm so happy. I'm thankful for you guys. I do have some people that I would like to thank specifically. I want to give a huge shout out to Erdina Francione. She did a remarkable job with helping us curate all of the topics and the questions throughout this entire panel series. And I really want to thank the Microsoft Network, because thank you, Ree. Like, thank you, Brianna. Like, so many people, Dashika Moore, like, so many people within Microsoft have really engaged and helped We Are Tech become empowered and make what we're doing more dynamic. The USC Black Alumni Association, they helped us market this event to our college students for our second panel. I want to thank BSD. Thank you so much, Nikki. Like, your team, Beth, I see Beth is in the audience. Like, your team has really, really helped amplify We Are Tech, and it's been phenomenal working with you guys. And I also would like to thank Miss Joanna Nelius from Gizmodo. She has been doing a write-up for We Are Tech, and she has specifically highlighted this panel series. So it's been really fulfilling to bring together all these people to really create an infrastructure, like, more than just having the talk. Let's talk about equity. No, now it's time to, now that we have everybody together in this infrastructure, it's time to act on these solutions that we've proposed to make the tech industry more equitable for our community. So I really appreciate having you guys here this evening. And this is just the start. I'm gonna be calling you guys so we can start working on some next projects. So thank you guys so much. And I really appreciate you guys for being here. Have a good one.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone on the panel.
Yeah, thanks.
You guys were so insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, Betty helped somebody get a check at BSD.
You're welcome.
I love it. All right.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
I'll see y'all.